Being 6:30, conservation meeting for Tuesday, December 20th, 2022, 6:30 at the McDonald Brown Conference Room is now open. So, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes for December 6th.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second
I'll
it.
second it.
I'll go ahead.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, this Carol, okay. All right, first one is the new public hearing for 541 Matfield Street. Request of determination, applicability for replacement of failed septic system. I'll read that in. Under the Wetlands Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40 MGL, as amended, the West Bridgewater Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Rules and Regulations, and the West Bridgewater Comprehensive Stormwater Management Regulations, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on December 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM in the McDonald Brown Conference Room. All set.
And I'm going to be making the presentation. The engineer ended up with conflicting schedules, so he has to be in Norton the same time he has to be here.
Okay.
And this one is pretty simple. It's a failed septic system. Has to get replaced. It's actually has failed.
Yeah.
Board of Health has signed off on it. The only issue I had with it was we need to put markers on the site because there are none. And there is previously disturbed within the 50-foot. So if you look at the plan, my recommendation was 6 markers where the pink dots are.
Yeah.
One's right at the 50-foot limit, and then the others are within the 50 to wetland line, but it's all previously disturbed. It's all lawn area.
Is it all
Disturbed
on?
down to the wetland line?
No, it's, if you see the woodland line that's marked,
Just
Yeah.
the little,
Oh, I'm looking at it the wrong way. Okay, I follow you.
and so
Yeah,
this area here is all woods.
yeah,
Um,
okay.
It's not a lot of thick underbrush, so somebody could theoretically move into that area if we didn't mark it, but.
All right.
But now they get the markers there, so you're all set. Well,
So-
we'll be all set.
Other than the silt fence requirement, they had started and wanted to try to get as much done before the weather got cold, and where it had failed, so it's kind of an after-the-fact filing. Notifications had gone out, everything's all set.
Was it a cesspool or just a dump?
It was a cesspool,
So they're gonna
yeah, they're gonna
fill that.
fill that in, and it looks to me like there possibly might be a sale of the house coming.
I'll say, yeah. Is it,
All the fees and everything were filed.
is it an older house, older couple, I mean?
That I'm not sure.
Okay. Must be an older house if it
It,
failed,
yeah.
so. All right, anybody got any questions?
I don't have any, no.
Anybody?
Tim,
Yes,
I noticed on the plans, it shows there's an existing portion of a shed to be removed. Is that just that little, hashed in area? Now that I'm looking
Yeah,
at it, I
it's,
think I answered my own question. Okay.
it's just an old, looks like horse shed or horse barn possibly. There was a chicken coop on the
Okay.
back side of it. It's in pretty rough shape.
Okay, so that's the piece that, so the shed is, the main part of the shed is still staying there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close?
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'll motion to issue a -3 determination.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. Okay. So the next one is continued public hearing for One Component Park.
And I have received requests to continue that till our January 3rd meeting.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to continue the meeting
To January
to
3rd.
January
I'll make the
3rd.
motion.
Yep.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. All right, the next one is 38. You want to do both of them like 38, 40, or?
35 and 38, I believe we're gonna have presentations on. And I'm
Is
not,
it all the same development, or are they all different?
they're all one developer. They all are 53G review.
Yeah.
And if you want to table those for now, the person that was gonna make the presentation.
No, he's behind.
You're here.
Yeah.
Then you're up.
Behind, all set.
Okay,
I was just gonna
perfect.
interrupt you.
Perfect timing.
First off, I want to request a continuance for 40 to the first meeting in February.
Oh, in February, okay.
For February?
Yes.
Okay.
We are still working out the soil testing, which changed our design for that, so. Just be presented 38 right now.
It would be February 7th.
February 7th.
Tonight, we have like a little update.
All right, so this is what, for 38 and 35, or?
This is
for
38
everything?
only.
38 only?
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Hunt with Level Design Group on behalf of Ajax United Drive LLC. Project is for a 130,000 square foot warehouse. This is the existing parcel right now. It's the existing paved lot, in pretty rough shape. Existing drainage, we're not reusing any of that. Proposed site plan. We're proposing parking along the back. We have an entrance for the trucks and a parking entrance along United Drive. All of the vehicle parking is along the back of the back and side of the building. Proposing 147 total spaces. Truck loading along this side and an area for trailer storage.
So is any of that area paved now, just as, if you look at that?
Yes, this, to just roughly overlay it, it would be something along the building here.
All that is paved?
Yes.
And was it being used for, what's the purpose of the being paved right now?
I am not sure. There's usually only like a car or two over there when I've been out to soil test. A few times I've been to the site.
So it's just a big open lot?
I'm not sure exactly what.
You gonna rip it up and repave, or
Hmm?
you gonna rip it up and redo it?
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, so then all the drainage will have to be done?
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
be redone, yeah.
Okay.
Drainage. So initially, I think we had two systems, but we had tested up here at one point, but based on the grading, we had to do it down here. Went back and did couple of test pits over in this location, higher than we initially anticipated, so that was part of the redesign. This had to come up about 1.5 feet. This is the only infiltration system, storm tech, it's 244 units. So right now, it's a series of catch basins along the back. They collect, and I believe all of this discharges straight out. It is treated, but it's not attenuated. There's 3 total storm scepters. This all connects to a storm scepter before discharging to the existing manhole. We're maybe adjusting the existing manhole, replacing it if needed. The southern portion of the site, or at least along the front, this whole area is collected in the actual infiltration system along with half of the building roof, which provides our recharge. And we also get the treatment, like I said, we get through the storm scepters. This helps us meet our pre and post development and provides our recharge volume. But as I said, a lot of it just bypasses directly. We didn't need to attenuate that much.
So half the roof of the building is going to the front and the other half is going to the back?
Correct. Roof drains on each side. this side all collects with this,
Okay.
these catch basins, and, this one actually goes to, oh, right, this isn't treated, so it goes straight out. These catch basins are all treated by a storm scepter before tying into a central manhole they all connect to, and then discharge out to that existing manhole. There's a series of catch basins along here that go to that third storm scepter, or second, and the third being here before the infiltration system.
So there's nobody's gonna be able to go around the building, right? No vehicles?
No,
Okay.
no. Not as it's graded now, we're just outside the 25, foot numbers there. Or sorry,
20, it
50.
should be 50.
50, yes. That's with 2-to-1 grading and not much of a buffer.
So tonight is just, are we at any approval stage, or?
No, the
No,
53G hasn't
done anything.
gotten the next review done.
So you
And
Yeah.
the other question, the interior of it is just warehouse storage only, no equipment, no vehicles?
As far as I know, yes, yes.
So we won't have to deal with,
And you're pre-treating on the south side, did you say? Any runoff?
Yeah, there's, we're pre-treating this with an storm scepter, the CDS units.
'Cause I'm thinking of the tractors that are gonna be backing in
Yeah.
there, and, you know, whatever,
Mhm.
coming,
Is it gonna be
dripping
like
oil. or-
refrigerated, anything refrigerated, like reefer bodies or anything like that for the trailers?
Sorry?
Is there gonna be like refrigeration, trailers in there?
I'm not sure
Cause you
about
got
that.
motors on that for the refrigerant and all that, in case something happens on them.
I can check in that and get back to you.
I mean, that whole site should be treated anyways,
Probably
pre-treated.
not, I don't think there's any freezers going in there.
No, but you never know,
Yeah, 'cause they use reefers to haul dry goods too,
Yeah.
so.
so,
Yeah, and then you got parking along the back too, but
yeah.
just for trailers. I
Yeah,
believe you
yeah,
said.
just for the trailers, yeah, the storage and then the actual loading, yeah.
And so, you just have to wait and see what the
so
53
I'm
does.
hoping that the review engineer
Yeah.
and you guys can get together by the next meeting, because I know you have a planning board meeting on the 4th, I believe, of January.
Well, oh yeah,
For
we get
this-
together, yeah. for
right.
this, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know the planning board said that they were gonna wait until
Yeah.
conservation
Yeah,
had
'cause I
done.
presented
So,
35 and that was the, yeah.
and so the whole review process, they said if we could work them through together.
Mhm.
So it's good to have an idea what's going on,
Yeah, it is,
so. But, anybody else got anything to say?
no.
No,
All right, so,
You wanna continue this one to January 3rd?
February,
Yeah, at least,
oh, this one?
um,
7th, February.
yeah, I think February, I know we had said that for the, 40, I'm not sure what we wanted to do for this, but I'm gonna say, yeah, February, I'll say, first.
Do this one to
Yeah.
February 7th as well?
Yeah,
Okay, so
if we need to change, we'll submit a letter, if we need to push one back or try and,
so I'll entertain a motion to continue 38 United Drive and 35, or just 38 for right now?
38.
Just 38 to
30.
February 7th.
I'll make the motion.
Second. I'm sorry, go ahead, Carol.
that doesn't matter.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then,
You wanted to continue 40, so you might as well do that.
okay, so
Continue.
entertain, do you wanna do that till when? The 7th too?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I entertain a motion to continue 40 United Drive to February 7th.
I'll make the motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
And
35, where are we at with that one? That's a parking lot.
Yep. I'm gonna say the same, I guess we're probably gonna have to resubmit, and figure out, and we'll.
Because that one I know
contact you.
the
We may have to push.
elevations changed because of the water table, so I wasn't sure where.
Yeah. I'll say the 7th, and I think it's more likely maybe we push the other one of the other ones back if needed.
Okay.
Because that one's probably first, because we moved on that one more than the other, so, yeah.
And I know that MBTA was looking to get in there, so I'm sure
Yeah.
they're probably pushing
Yeah.
a little heavier to,
Yeah.
okay.
So I'll entertain a motion to continue 35 United Drive to February 7th.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, and we've received some feedback from NHESP, but the only comments, I think mostly were for 40 United, mostly because it's undeveloped. But, yeah.
Okay.
We haven't officially got approval from them yet.
Okay. That sounds good.
Thanks for the update.
See you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the next one is administrative. Off West Street, off Old West Street, I guess, Scott? Goddard, consultant?
Scott's here.
Okay, you're all set.
So I think we're on for, this is not some public hearing per se, but sort of an administrative proceeding to discuss the issuance of the ORAD.
Yep.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we closed the meeting last
Yes, yep.
public hearing. So I got a copy. Thank you, Tim, for sending over a copy of a draft ORAD that was put together. I did see that just a short couple hours ago, and thought it might be a good idea to have a discussion about the wording and language in it before it's voted on, if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you have a copy there you could pull up so that everyone's looking at it, or the board can see?
Get mine up too.
I see we have a special guest, John Delano, on tonight. Hey, John, how you doing?
Great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, we pulled you out of retirement, huh?
Well, it's just a cameo.
There you go.
Let me see if I can get it.
All right.
Do you have it up, Tim? I can't quite
Yeah,
see the
no,
screen.
I didn't download it onto the file, so I didn't bring it up, but
Oh, okay.
I've got it.
We
here.
can just talk about it, I guess. It's fine.
I did send it out so all of the members had a copy to take a look at.
Okay, as long as they can.
Basically, what
See
I
it.
sent you is what we've used pretty much as a standard for a
Mhm.
lot of the different large projects
Yep.
we normally list. So,
So on the first page is fairly boilerplate, talks about the locus and the applicant's name and that stuff. The second page, I think, is the important part, that we get the findings right, just so that it kind of properly outlines what's reflected on the plan. Under the findings, it was checked off that bordering vegetated wetlands was correctly identified, which I agree with, and I think that's correct. And it was the second part that had the language that was under other, that I think it might make some sense to just vet that language out a little bit further. So it said, basically checked other, and then said under the accurate section, and then said isolated vegetated wetland, bordering land subject to flooding, isolated land subject to flooding, mean high water of potential vernal pool, sort of listed all these things. And
Yeah.
I think there might be some unnecessary language in there that would make it a little confusing. And what I mean by that is, like, so isolated vegetated wetlands, that was the discussion we talked about at the last meeting. The way I understood, and I still understand the regs as we went through it, was that the finding could be that though the bylaw is not explicit about regulating isolated vegetated wetlands, that they could be, if they were found to be non-jurisdictional under the bylaw, that we would still, under good faith in a new notice of intent submittal, propose mitigation in the form of replication and wetland enhancements at a greater than 1-to-1 ratio on the site. So I would request that the commission make a finding that the IVWs were non-jurisdictional on the site. The other things that were mentioned, like it mentions bordering land subject to flooding. I don't think we had a bordering land subject to flooding on the site or shown on the plans. So having that listed there. Same with isolated land subject to flooding. We also don't have anything like that listed on the plans. And we don't, there was one spot that was like an old test pit. I think it was mapped as a PVP, very small area. We show it and label it like that on the plans, but, so I think it would make the most sense to just identify, kind of nix a lot of that wording and just say that the IVW boundaries were found to be correct, though non-jurisdictional under the bylaw, and then whether it's written or not written, there's an understanding that mitigation under a notice of intent will be submitted, and we're sort of held to that because we're dependent on the commission for an order of conditions.
And why necessarily would you object to them being jurisdictional?
That's more, it's not that I have an objection to it philosophically, if that's what the intent of the wording of the bylaw suggested. It's just that when I work through the bylaw and the regulatory language locally, the West Bridgewater regs, there doesn't appear to be any mention of wetlands, whether or not they border rivers or streams, isolated wetlands. I mean, that kind of language just isn't there. So in towns where IVW jurisdiction is intended, the norm is that that's identified either explicitly under the statement of jurisdiction or under definitions as further explanation of what the words in the statement of jurisdiction are. It would state that the intent was to regulate isolated wetlands. And then
Okay.
some towns will go further to even clarify what that then means. So there might be a minimum size, or they have to be, say 5,000 square feet to be regulated, so that they're not intending to regulate something that's a couple hundred square feet, for example. It might be based on vegetation only, it might be based on hydrology only, soils only. So different towns have it differently when it's intended, but a lot of bylaws are written just like the West Bridgewater bylaw that doesn't have any seemingly call out for these kind of areas.
If I may, Scott, under section 9 of the bylaw, vegetated wetlands, it doesn't specifically spell out isolated vegetated wetlands. However, 9.1.9, land within 100 feet of a vegetated wetland is likely to be significant to the protection and maintenance of vegetated wetlands, therefore protection in the interest for which the resources areas serve to protect. And
Yeah.
that whole section goes through flood control, water storage prevention, water quality. It lists the soils, the plant communities, vegetation, type of vegetation. And so we don't spell out an isolated vegetative wetland by definition. We call it a vegetative wetland, and by jurisdiction, anything within 100 feet is a regulated area by our bylaw. We could regulate
Right.
up to the 100 feet, but we choose to use a 50-foot no-touch buffer.
Yep, I understand what you're saying, and I looked under so there are definition sections in the bylaw and regs, and there's under the definition of vegetated wetlands, in fact, I think there's no definition. It simply just says where a definition is lacking, under this bylaw, then the definitions are pulled from the Wetland Protection Act.
And we also have the land subject to flooding section, which does list isolated land subject to flooding. And that definition would also cover any one of these isolated vegetative wetlands as well, if we wanted to go into that section of it. I mean,
Would that help?
I agree, your intentions to protect and to deal with those in the next phase permitting, but not knowing if it's gonna be you in the next phase, or within 2 years, another applicant comes through, and we already have a ORAD on file, to change the process. I think the isolated vegetated wetland is an important piece of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we do, we try to keep everything to what it says in the bylaws. And we want to protect it. Is there something like are you trying to say that you want to replicate something, take something, what you're saying is not to qualify it as whatever you want to say and replicate it somewhere else? Is that what you're trying to, you want
Well,
us to do, or?
I did advance the beginning of a conversation at the last meeting that a future notice of intent would for sure be coming in that would involve a kind of a fill replace proposal of some of these pocket areas for sure. And that would be subject to your, a notice of intent and getting an order of conditions with appropriate mitigation and such. So that's likely to be the next phase of permitting that you see on this site. So since the areas that we're talking about are going to be the subject of proposed permitting alterations, part of this ANRAD was to get them classified, properly. So that's why we're doing it. So we get the extent, that's good, that's the flags and the limitations, so that's the boundaries are established, and then just kind of labeling them the right thing, is a good play. So under the bylaw, the isolated land subject to flooding so under state law, that would have a 1/4 acre foot size threshold. How would you handle in the commission's practice ILSF under the bylaw? Would you see it having a different size threshold?
Not necessarily. I mean, we would probably on that one, for the most part, we refer to the state thresholds as far as where we require replication and filling.
Like to determine if something qualifies as isolated land subject to flooding in the first place, under state law, it has to have a 1/4 acre foot volume of water on an annual basis.
That's a state law then. Well, we've been using these.
So these areas that we're talking about on the site, they're much smaller than those kind of volumes.
And that's where,
So would you still view that as bylaw only ILSF, for example?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
I mean, these bylaws, we've been using these for other projects that have come in front of us, and we've never had a problem or issues with anybody, trying to, I don't want to say, argue with them or fight to the point where they want to change them to do any kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say anything wrong, but we pretty much want to stick to what the bylaws are. And if there's any small pockets, like we have mitigated and had done replication plans on projects, depending on, if it's just like I don't know what size, a reasonable small, I guess, part of the property that could be replicated somewhere else. We have done stuff on that for the engineers and all that stuff to be able to work with. So, I mean, until that point comes in front of us and we actually see the size and all that stuff, then we will, take in the effect of what we want to do with that.
I guess what I've been thinking
So maybe
about.
what if we then, because I do see the language in the bylaw that references isolated lands subject to flooding. That that is in the bylaw. I still don't see the IVW language. It's not in there, from what I can see. So maybe the play is, and I'm just talking out loud and thinking, maybe the areas not called IVWs in the ORAD, we just call them local bylaw ILSF.
Locking the door on me?
You know,
How about if we refer to them as vegetated wetlands, which is in the bylaw,
Yeah,
and just don't call them isolated? If the isolated is what we're having the problem on. Under the local bylaw, vegetated wetlands as jurisdictional within 100 feet are regulated.
yeah,
And that's-
that way they don't, yeah, that way you don't have to be
It seems to
isolated.
me.
And then it
that-
lists within the bylaw what a vegetated wetland is.
If it's non-jurisdictional, then even though you've agreed to replicate, you would choose.
Yeah.
You would choose which isolated areas would be filled and you'd replicate. Otherwise, we would choose.
Yeah,
If
well,
it's jurisdictional as to which ones would or wouldn't. Is that what we're driving at here?
Is
If
it-
there's no jurisdiction,
Yeah.
theoretically, they could do what they want and then replicate
yeah,
anywhere else. Am I right or wrong?
sounds right.
Yes, that's how I would be interpreting.
I don't know. I don't know if we need a further interpretation.
I mean, do you, if you look at the plan or whatever, are you actually kind of like, do you know which ones you want to say that are not jurisdictional or not to our holding of what we can do with them? And then and then tell, you want to replicate it somewhere else? I mean, do you actually have what you want to do with those spots that, basically, what if you must be looking at it and saying, oh, I want this spot moved, and this spot moved, and this spot moved.
Well, the way it's laid out, you have to. I mean, otherwise you don't do anything in there.
True, but I mean, you must know what you want moved and
Yeah,
what
I
don't
mean-
want moved.
when you go up Old West Road,
Yeah,
coming in, heading toward that solar field, all along the right side, there's a series of pockets of isolated areas between Old West Road and the old railroad bed
Yeah.
that were created via, land stripping
yeah,
at some, past date. They brought that land down to the right above the ground, right at or below or above the groundwater table, plus or minus, right? And so where they cut a little bit too deep, there's groundwater breakout, and where they didn't go too deep, it's, just kind of barely upland. So it's sort of shallow groundwater and or groundwater breakout that's created vegetated wetland situation with hydric soils and wetland plants growing in these various pockets. So the intent is going to be to come in back with the commission for a project that alters or redevelops that zone in there. And it would result in disruption of a number of these areas. I think there's opportunity on the site to propose a project that really has some net ecological benefit from a wetlands perspective, the functions and values, wildlife habitat and stormwater controls and all these good things that are cited as in the bylaw. But I, as a consultant in a regular, working with regulators like yourself a lot, I find myself just kind of stuck on the language of bylaws. And honestly, I see it happen a lot where commissions, might just get in the habit of doing certain things that may or may not be how the laws in that town were originally written or intended. So I was trying to think of a way to kind of accommodate both sides, still satisfy the intent of the commission under your regs by protecting areas like this, and I think we can propose that in a nice project that will be under your review.
So you want us
But
to
the
change our
vegetated
wording?
wetland thing doesn't have a definition. That's the problem. There's
So
no
do you-
definition in
so
there
do you
other
want
than
us
what's
to-
what's in the state laws.
Do you want us to change that wording and
Or not put it in.
and not put it in the way you want it to be, or the way you think you want it to
I mean,
be?
right, I mean, I think
Not
you
the way that
could,
we
you
want
could
it.
just check bordering vegetated wetland, and that second box could say isolated, vegetated areas, not subject to bylaw, but will be weighed in future notice of intent for net benefit to wetlands, or something to that effect. But then we have other, like the BLSF, ILSF, like these things are stated on there that aren't on the site plans also. So I think some of that language warrants revisiting.
I don't think we've run into this before, have we?
No.
I mean, I think we've been very generous on projects in the past and
We work with,
Sure.
replicating isolated wetlands.
We've
you know,
worked with them,
Understanding
yeah.
what it, it's a business venture and you have to do certain things to develop it. But we haven't seen what you want to do there exactly. I think we're amenable to
Right.
changes.
I mean, you can always come in front of us with everything that you want to do on the plans, bring it in front of us and say, okay, we'll allow this to happen, allow this to happen.
Mhm.
You just want us to make sure that we're wording it right before we do that, or before you do that in front of us, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what's the
Exactly.
problem with leaving the language?
Yeah.
What do you think would happen if we left that language?
Do you think you're not going to be
what
able
would
to do
happen?
what you want to do because of that language is not going to be changed or not?
Well, I think, the BLSF, ILSF, vernal pool language isn't something that's even reflected on the plan. The IBW stuff is how it's labeled on the plan. They're all labeled as isolated vegetated wetlands.
Right.
But pretty much almost all of these areas are in buffer zone anyway, so they do get reviewed. It's not like we could just go in there and start altering these areas or something like that.
Right.
Anything on the site's gonna be subject to your purview and permitting oversight.
Mm.
So I just wanna be careful to only apply the bylaw to what the bylaw, really is written for. And the way that I read it, it says, there's no definition for vegetated wetlands. And it just defers to the Mass Wetland Protection Act. So in those cases, the Mass Wetland Protection Act identifies vegetated wetlands as those which border on streams, rivers, ponds, etc. That's how the vegetated wetland phrase is cited under definitions in the Act. And your bylaw says where there's an absence of further definitions, it defers to the definitions in the Wetland Protection Act. So that's how I kind of connect the dots in my head on determining what I think was the intended purpose. Now, I wasn't there when it was written and drafted and discussed at town meeting and all that stuff, and maybe some of you guys were a part of that and would have a better sense than me, but that's just how I read the language.
My suggestion then at this point would be to get rid of the isolated vegetative wetland, because that was something we took off your plans. Call it a vegetated wetland as listed in the West Bridgewater Conservation Commission Rules and Regulations, Section 9, complete, as jurisdictional, and then get rid of the bordering subject land and the isolated subject, delete that totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because if you read the Section 9 in its entirety, under the rules and regulations, that covers
Yeah.
everything that we're talking with explicitly saying permitting activity for the 50-foot and the standards for the 50-foot that must be met. And that's under the rules and regulations part.
And then if you come in front of us, we can work with you still.
And then we can work with individually pockets and what we need
Yeah.
to change and
I
move.
mean, maybe you
And
write it up and have the engineer look at it.
And I can get that done
Digest
first
it
thing
a
in the
little-
morning.
Digest it a little bit, yeah.
So if you want me to work on that verbiage first thing tomorrow morning and get that out to you,
Yeah, I think I think cleaning up the language makes some sense. You know, I know you're within your 21 days to act on issuance of a permit, but, you know, the applicant you don't have to abide by that for this, you know, so if you want to table this to your next meeting, clean up the language a little bit, and then you could sign it at your
Back
next meeting,
together
that's
again,
certainly
yeah.
fine with the applicant.
Yeah, go along with that.
Tim, I like what you suggested.
All right, so we will put this on
Tim,
for,
Tim. What? What's that?
actually,
John-
we've already closed the
John
hearing.
has his,
John, yeah, go ahead. Jason?
hand raised.
Yes, John.
I was gonna recommend that you keep the last sentence, no matter what you decide.
Yep,
And as such, when the application comes in, you can waive certain requirements. You have that prerogative if there's justification to do so. So I like what you've done or discussed just the last part of this discussion, but I'd recommend keeping anyone on notice that you still might be able to protect or will protect the 50-foot no disturb.
okay.
We plan on doing on it, yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole intent,
Yeah.
so that, keeping that in there would be a good thing.
And Scott, you understand that too, right?
Yep, I understood everything.
Okay.
Scott will digest it a little bit, the next meeting we'll,
Yep, or if we get it all put together and people are around, we
can
can
sign it.
sign it
If we-
beforehand,
if
because
we
we've
go-
already
yeah,
closed it. That
Yeah.
way there, we can meet the 21-day deadline.
Sure, sure.
Because it'd be just an administrative.
Well, then we'll see what happens when the plans come in.
So I'll be in touch in the morning, Scott?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
That's interesting. That's,
Okay, well, we'll move on to the next one. 586 Manley Street, both of them, I guess.
And neither one of those have any further updates. They're all in the process of waiting for
Signing off.
final wrap-up and closings and everything else dealing with. Part of the problem that I can say this is that the current owner has a contract to store some of the trailers that are at the site now, and he's trying to find another location where he can store them.
Oh, really?
So that's part of, I think, why this process is being
they're
delayed a
still
little bit.
storing in there though, aren't they?
Because of,
I
Well,
thought I saw trailer, oh, that was next door, that's Ryder, right?
yep,
Okay, that's what I saw today, yeah.
okay.
All right,
so if you want to continue both of those to the next meeting,
Yep, okay, so I'll do both 586 Manley Streets, and we'll continue that to the, what's the next meeting, though?
that'd be January 3rd.
Okay, January 3rd?
do we have to motion that, or just continue?
Oh, no, this is,
Yeah, we've been motioning to continue them.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. Okay, the other ones are just signing some documents. And other business includes unscheduled items discussed, whatever.
And I have nothing else to report.
Anybody else got anything? Has anybody, I didn't know if Jason, if you had gone up to Gilmore or next to Components, just to check out that area there that the people were talking about?
No, I haven't had a chance.
Okay.
No, I didn't know if we were gonna kind of, I know we had kind of talked about maybe like setting up something where we all kind of just blocked
Yeah.
it or something.
I went up there a couple
I'm
times.
open for that.
I went up a couple times. Tim went up a couple times.
I went up.
And Mo went up. From
Yeah.
what I could see, the only problem I think that I don't think there's any problem on the component side. I think the biggest problem is the street Gilmore comes down and it just builds up at the bottom because all there is a bunch of leaves, everything that goes off to where that foundation, the old foundation is, because everything goes down in that area and it just builds up. There's a ton of leaves down there, so if that can somehow get cleaned up, I think that might take care of the problem with that.
And between cleaning up the leaves and if you look at the site, it may require some type of an easement or something from the landowner to, beside the foundation, dig the trench a little bit further over to clean it up so that there can be water flowing. The only comment I would have is if we get one of those 2 or 3 inch rainstorms, there may be overflow water that comes off of Component Park because of the way the new cement pad went in and the ramping up to that may drain that direction.
But nothing
But
to
it's only if it's one of these large rainstorms, and that's when the puddling would start, and it wouldn't drain wouldn't drain down because it has nowhere to go. So if the town can get in and clean that side of the foundation.
Is that town property right there?
No,
Is that private?
it's private property,
Okay.
so it may take a little bit of
Maybe it need to be a,
an easement granting or something to get in there and,
I think the 53G will pick up on that too.
well, the 53G will pick up the drainage shedding off of the parking lot in the cement pad,
Right.
and depending on the elevations and where that goes, and correct that problem.
yeah.
So we can eliminate, or should be able to eliminate, any other storm runoff
'Cause I
in that
think the
direction.
neighbors may be dumping leaves up
Yeah.
in there. You think
Right,
they're raking them and dumping
Where all the
them
leaves are
there.
coming from, and
Yeah.
I couldn't tell the day I was there, because if you look at the prevailing winds, they may just blow right across the parking lot,
Yeah.
all up to that side of the property.
Yeah.
And then when the cleanup crews come, they just blow them down to the end.
From what I can see up in the area with the trees, there's not that, I don't think there's that type of tree with all the leaves to allow that to happen. So it might be landscaping blowing, like you said.
Right, into that, and it's just, over the years, it just piled up.
Right.
And like I said earlier, if I can talk to Chris and see if that foundation could be dug out a little and made a dry well,
Right.
that might help alleviate, get the leaves out of it,
Yeah.
and then just fill it with stone.
Yeah.
And
Because that was their concern, right, was
That's,
water.
yeah, I just don't really, because I went up, I asked if I could go out behind Turner Steel. He allowed me to go, I think it was Peter. He allowed me to go out there, and there's nothing out around his place that even does anything to affect any of the neighbors over there, so he's all set.
like I said, the old
Let's-
parking lot only has one storm drain in it. So to take all the water that's shed from the building currently, and the parking lot, and the cement pad, and put that into one storm drain,
And if that drain that goes out towards Howard is anywhere corroded,
Right.
he's gonna have to replace that.
right, and
I,
it,
And
I
Bill-
did notice coming, was that what you were just talking, coming in on, by the church
Church,
side?
yeah.
Yeah.
There was a ton of water in there.
Yeah.
the last rainstorm, right after our meeting,
Yeah.
I went out and I checked that one, and it was covered and clogged with pine needles.
Is that what it is?
As soon as I scraped it off, it drained to
And
nothing.
so it couldn't drain.
It couldn't drain, it was just plugged. But, again,
That's-
that's something that has to be checked and kept track of, that if it does get covered, somebody's
Right.
gotta go and uncover it.
Well, that's part of the component, right?
Right.
So,
Okay.
This extra foundation though, I mean, is there a reason, like, is it on somebody's property so that the town couldn't take it out?
I think it is on private property. I'll do some research on that and find out whether it's, because it looks like half of it's on Component's property and half of it's on the abutter's property.
Interesting.
So for somehow reason, way back when the railroad was going through, there was a building there, and they must have subdivided land, and when they did,
Yeah, that's an interesting research.
right, the old foundation
So that-
was sitting there.
Yeah, so then if that's true, then, I mean, there's two ways to go after it, right? We could either add that to the components piece, like, hey, like, in order to help here, like, half this foundation, a third of the foundation or something like that is on component property, so, you know, help fund cleaning this up and making a culvert or basin or something like that to catch that water to ease all that flooding. Or go the other way and see if the owner of the other side would allow an easement for the town to come in and do the same thing.
Right, which, and I think the problem was when Chris had DPW guys go out to try to see what was there, they went out with a piece of equipment that was not big enough to knock that foundation apart. And if they could have knocked it down just 2 feet, that would have been enough to drain that whole end of the street when it does rain, down to the wetland that's down below.
Right.
And so,
as for people getting water in the house, that's just.
that's just
Well,
groundwater.
That's just
I didn't
It's
see
not
groundwater.
surface
anything.
water.
Because that has nothing to do with,
Maybe high water table, I
Right.
don't know.
that's what, I mean,
But it definitely, at the end of that street, slopes down to the wetland in the back.
that whole,
So that would be the natural flow of the water to that corner.
And I was looking at other people's property out back behind them. The whole topography of that land out back there is just
It drops
hilly
right
down, hilly
yeah.
down, hilly
Yeah.
down. It creates pockets, so I mean, the water is just an issue that's just because of West Bridgewater.
Yeah.
It's, so,
But I will work with DPW, we'll see what we can come up with for a solution.
but now, I was also thinking, should we get Chris in here for the next meeting if the neighbors happen, the townspeople come in? Should maybe we have Chris come in and kind of like
Let me
see
find
if-
out what
Has it
they
gone
think they can
next
do and
door
who
yet?
actually owns that corner.
Did it go to planning?
Yeah, there will be a planning board.
Oh, they
review.
haven't done it yet, though.
They did, yes, but it's been continued there as well.
Okay.
It has,
So it-
okay.
Just-
And
But
that
at
may be,
least like, sorry.
yep, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but at least like what Lee said, you know, if Chris was willing to at least come in and as a good faith effort, at least hear,
what the people
you
have
know,
to say.
and what the people are saying, and then, you know, just to have another eyes and ears there to provide that information and be like, okay, like, so that, you know, a meeting between us and them and, you know, us and Chris's department and whatever, like, figure out a solution to this, like,
Right.
you know, it is wet Bridgewater, I understand that.
Yeah.
And so we're all pumping water out of our basements, but,
Right.
you know, like having streets flood where they starting to become impassable, that's not a private problem, that's a public issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All
guess
right.
we'll see what happens. But I think that if the neighbors come in there, they'll be more than, I think they'll be happy to, if Chris can get in here,
Yep.
then
I'll
they'll
talk to
be able
Chris
to,
about the next,
be able to see that we're trying to help them out in that, in the best of way in both sides.
Right.
So. All right, I guess we'll just
Some things to
sign some papers.
does anybody else have anything? 'Cause
Can I
it's-
electronically sign those?
Sure can. John, how's are you laying on the beaches during the day and taking in the sun, having some cocktail drinks or what?
You can't hear us.
Yeah, I think I heard you. I liken it like a perpetual cruise. You go to bed, you get up, you eat, you go on an excursion, you come back and you eat, and then you go out on another excursion, you
Take
come
a
back
nap.
and eat.
Gotta take a nap in between.
Yeah, a nap there. But seriously, I wanted to join in tonight to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Well, same to you.
And I wanted to see your faces because I miss you guys.
We miss you
Aw,
too.
Thanks.
We miss you too.
I like
Yep,
it.
definitely missed.
And I'm glad to see
And-
it's one more tan too.
So
Merry Christmas, John.
I keep pretty busy by going to a wildlife preserve down here, and the wildlife are abundant and diverse, and it's really amazing. And so I've really been enjoying the outdoors and taking walks through that preserve.
Well, you'll find stuff to do, knowing you. How about West Bridgewater down there? You'd have to change your name, though.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you popped in tonight. Be nice to.
Well, it's good seeing everybody, and I wish the same to all the people that watch your video, because I do know people do that, and so Merry Christmas to all of them as well.
Merry Christmas to you and Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas.
See you.
To
All
you
right.
too,
So
Carol
long.
and
Bye.
Jason.
Yeah, you too, Jason and Carol. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you all.
And to all a
Okay,
good night.
so hold on a minute.
Yeah.
So now I have to motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that's an all a good night.
Good night.